At 27, my life took a bizarre, almost unbelievable nosedive when my estranged father, the guy who'd skipped out on mom and me years ago, after his little affair imploded, our family finally kicked the bucket. And wouldn't you know it, the dearly departed left everything to me. It was a truly twisted cocktail of emotions. Obviously, there was a flicker of sadness at the finality of his existence. But let's be brutally honest, we were strangers. Then, bam! Overnight, I was swimming in more money than I'd ever dreamed of. I inherited a massive chunk of shares in some mega-famous corporation. It felt surreal, like something ripped from the pages of a trashy romance novel. Suddenly, the possibilities were endless. I could actually consider doing whatever my heart desired. Mom, bless her cautious soul, was a nervous wreck about the whole thing. One evening, as we sat in our familiar, slightly worn kitchen, she looked me dead in the eye and said, her voice laced with worry, "Be careful, Bethany. Now that you're loaded, you'll see just how many bloodsuckers come crawling out of the woodwork." I just scoffed, trying to sound confident. "Mom, please, I can handle a few gold diggers." Then I met Chad. He was just a regular clerk, a face in the crowded background at the real estate agency, where I was trying to unravel the tangled mess of Dad's estate. The place was always a zoo, buzzing with stressed-out people and overflowing paperwork. But Chad stood out. He had this disarmingly straightforward charm and an easygoing smile that seemed to cut through all the chaos, simplifying everything. "Looks like you've got quite the stack there," he offered, a genuine hint of concern in his eyes as he gestured to my mountainous pile of documents. "Need a hand? Would love some help, thanks." I admitted, feeling utterly swamped. Feels like I'm drowning in paperwork. As he efficiently sorted through the forms, he kept the conversation light and breezy. "So inheriting a fortune, huh? Bet that's a lot to take in." "You have no idea," I sighed, feeling a sliver of ease wash over me. "It's a lot all at once." We ended up chatting more each time I went back. It wasn't just about the dreary legal documents or the confusing shares. We actually connected over simple things like our shared love for old movies and our favorite weekend haunts. He was so easy to talk to, and he had this knack for making me laugh when I least expected it, a genuine, belly-shaking laugh that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. After a few weeks, he casually asked me out. "Just drinks," he said, at the slightly divey but totally cool bar we'd both mentioned liking. "So how about we take this discussion outside of these boring walls?" he suggested with a charming grin. "Grab a beer with me," I agreed without a second thought. It just felt right. Our casual dates quickly morphed into something deeper, something real. Before I knew it, we were whispering about a future together, those late-night heart-to-heart talks that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. One lazy evening, while we were demolishing a pepperoni pizza at my place, he turned to me, his eyes earnest, and said, "Bethany, I've been thinking, why don't we make this official? Marry me." His proposal was so Chad. No dramatic fireworks, no kneeling in a fancy restaurant, just straight to the point, delivered with that same easygoing charm that had first caught my attention. I almost choked on my pizza slice from laughing so hard, a joyous, slightly hysterical sound. Then, through my laughter, I managed a tearful, "Yeah, why not?" Planning the wedding was surprisingly straightforward. We both craved something simple, something that felt authentically us. We spent hours talking about what truly mattered, discovering a shared preference for a small, intimate ceremony with just our closest friends and family. As we mapped out our life together, the realization of how much we had in common bloomed between us. We both harbored this secret dream of starting our own business, and my inheritance felt like the golden ticket. The stepping stone we needed. Chad was a whirlwind of ideas, constantly sketching out plans on napkins or the backs of crumpled receipts. "Think about it, Beth," he'd say, his eyes practically glowing with excitement with each new concept. "We could build something great, something just ours." "Yeah," I'd reply, equally, swept up in the possibilities. "I love that. Building our future together." We spent countless nights lost in conversations about the possibilities, from the type of business we could launch to the far-flung places we might travel. Our future stretched out before us like an unblemished map, filled with shared dreams and ambitions. Before we officially tied the knot, Chad suggested we use the inheritance. those unexpected shares to kickstart our entrepreneurial venture. It felt right, building something from the ground up together. I was completely on board, buzzing with anticipation, but I figured I should run it by Mom first. I remember sitting in her old cozy kitchen, the one with the yellowed wallpaper that had definitely seen better days, and spilling the beans about, using the inheritance as startup capital. Mom's face immediately tightened, that familiar serious expression, settling in the one that always preceded some hard-won wisdom. Bethany, she said, stirring her coffee slowly, deliberately. You've got to protect yourself. Get a prenup. She insisted, her voice firm. Make sure it spells out that if one of you cheats and bails, they lose their share in the business. Ashma frowned, kind of taken aback. Mom, why even bring up cheating? I trust Chad. We're not going to screw each other over. She sighed, the sound heavy with the weight of old hurts. I'm just saying, Bethany, because of what your father did to me, it's not about trust. It's about being smart. A pang of understanding hit me. Maybe she had a point. I didn't want to dwell on it, but arguing felt wrong. Sorry, Mom, I murmured, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. I guess you're right. When I told Chad about the prenup, he wasn't exactly thrilled at first. He just went quiet, a flicker of hurt crossing his usually open face. A prenup, Beth? Really? He finally asked, his voice a mix of surprise and a touch of disappointment. Yeah, I explained quickly, trying to smooth things over. It's just, Mom suggested it. It's like insurance, Not that I think we'll ever need it. I watched his reaction closely, my heart pounding a little. He took a deep breath, ran his fingers through his hair, and then looked me straight in the eyes, his gaze unwavering. I love you, Beth. You're the most important person in my world. If this makes you feel secure, then I'm on board. Let's do it your way. Hearing him say that, a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. We got the prenup sorted, making sure it was fair but firm on the terms. And after that, we had a modest and dignified wedding ceremony, exactly the kind I'd dreamed of. We went ahead and sold those inherited shares, and the money that flooded into our account was more than enough to get our dream off the ground. Chad's eyes practically lit up like Christmas trees when we saw the figures. This is it, Beth, he exclaimed, his excitement infectious. We're going to make it big. We poured every ounce of our energy into setting up our business. It was going to be a wholesale warehouse for medical equipment. Neither of us had any real experience in the field, but Chad was a natural with people, and I had a knack for numbers. It felt like the perfect synergy. We'll start small, grow fast, keep overhead low, and expand when we can afford it. Chad planned out loud, his finger tracing potential warehouse locations on a map. Sounds like a plan. I agreed, already picturing the bustling warehouse, the orders flying, and our future unfolding before us. Our wholesale medical equipment business took off like a rocket, exceeding our wildest expectations. It was surprisingly high, and suddenly we were swamped. It was a good problem to have. But a problem nonetheless, Chad. We need to hire more help, I said one evening, my voice barely audible above the rustle of paperwork that had taken over our dining table. It's just us, and we can't keep up. Chad, his face buried in his laptop screen, barely looked up. We can manage a bit longer, Beth. Hiring means spending. Let's just push through this, I sighed, rubbing my temples, a dull ache starting to throb behind my eyes. Push through. Look at us, Chad. We're burning out. This isn't sustainable. He finally shot me a look, a mixture of frustration and fatigue etched on his face. All right, let's look into it. But we keep it tight, maybe 1 or 2 part-timers. Agreeing on that was a relief. But it was just the beginning of our growing pains. With new staff came new responsibilities, training, payroll management, stuff that neither of us had a clue about. I took it upon myself to learn on the fly, signing up for a couple of online courses on business management and accounting. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. Hey, I found this online course on accounting, I told Chad one night as we were locking up the warehouse, exhaustion clinging to us like a heavy cloak. Thought it might help with the books. He nodded, looking genuinely relieved. That's great, Beth. I've been worried about keeping up with all that. But as the business grew, so did the tension between us. We were both constantly stressed, and it started to show in our interactions. Chad was out networking, schmoozing clients, and closing deals, while I was stuck back at the warehouse making sure everything ran smoothly. It felt like we were living separate lives, our paths diverging. One particularly rough day, fueled by caffeine and frayed nerves, I snap. You're always out there whining and dining, having a grand old time, while I'm stuck here sorting out mess after mess. Chad's face hardened, schmoozing. You think I enjoy this? This is for us, for the business, Beth. It doesn't feel like us anymore, Chad. I shot back, my voice cracking slightly with the weight of the pressure. It feels like you and me, separately. We both cooled down eventually, the storm of the moment passing, but it was clear we needed to make some serious changes. We decided to start scheduling regular meetings to sync up to discuss what was happening on both sides of the business, and more importantly, to reconnect as a couple, not just as business partners. Let's try to not talk shop during dinner. Okay, Chad suggested. During one of our first attempts to find some semblance of work-life balance, just us. No business talk. I agreed wholeheartedly, more than ready to find some normalcy again. Deal. And maybe I added a hopeful note in my voice. We can actually take a day off together soon, like a real day off. As we implemented these small changes, things slowly started to improve. The business was still incredibly demanding, but managing our roles and our stress became a little easier. It was a constant learning curve, navigating the rapid growth of our company and the inevitable strains it put on our relationship. As our business continued its upward trajectory, so did the relentless workload. I found myself buried in the day-to-day operations, managing everything from inventory levels to irate customer complaints. It was a nonstop barrage, and all that stress, coupled with too many quick, unhealthy meals, wolfed down at my cluttered desk, meant I started packing on the pounds. My once comfortably casual jeans became a daily struggle to zip, and I barely recognized the tired, somewhat puffy woman staring back at me in the bathroom mirror. It wasn't just the physical changes. I felt my energy draining away, that initial spark of excitement, slowly dimming. Chad, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in the high-stakes world of networking with trading partners. For him, it was all about building relationships, cultivating connections that would ultimately benefit our bottom line. But as he threw himself more and more into that aspect of the job, I felt him subtly, then not so subtly, drifting away. He started coming home later, and later, his excuses vague. His explanations hurried, just had to wrap up with a client, or work got crazy at the office, he'd mumble already halfway up the stairs. It was happening far too often, and a knot of unease began to tighten in my stomach. One evening, with a crucial party hosted by one of our biggest suppliers looming, Chad dropped a bombshell that left me reeling. We were in our kitchen, the fluorescent light highlighting the bags under my eyes, as I debated whether to even bother trying on another dress. I knew it would be too tight when he casually announced, not even bothering to look up from his phone. Beth, you're not coming to the party? I froze, the silky fabric of the dress clutched in my hand. Excuse me, why the hell not? He finally glanced up, his expression cold, detached. Look, the people there, they have a certain image. You don't really fit it anymore, Beth. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What's that supposed to mean? He sighed, as if explaining something incredibly obvious to a particularly dense child. It means you've let yourself go, Beth. You don't look the part, and I can't have you standing next to me tonight. It's bad for business, he stated bluntly, as if discussing a faulty piece of equipment rather than his own wife. I threw the dress down on the counter, my whole body trembling with a potent cocktail of anger and profound hurt. So I'm just an embarrassment to you now, is that it? He simply shrugged his indifference, a brutal slap in the face. I'm thinking about the business. That's what you should be doing instead of getting upset over a party. His words were like shards of ice piercing my heart, and I could feel the hot sting of tears pricking at the back of my eyes, but I fought them back with every ounce of my will. You go to your precious party, Chad, I said, my voice dangerously low. Don't worry about me. He left without another word, the slam of the front door echoing the sudden emptiness that had opened up inside me. I spent the night alone, the silence of the house mocking the vibrant life we had once shared. The more I replayed his callous words in my head, the deeper the wound became. Was this what our marriage had devolved into? Was the business now the only thing he truly cared about? When he finally stumbled back in, it was late. I was sitting in the living room, the lights off, a solitary figure, shrouded in darkness, just waiting. I needed to understand how he could think. It was okay to treat me with such utter contempt. "How was the party?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil raging within me. "It was fine," he replied casually, tossing his keys onto the table as if nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. "Got some promising leads." "That's good," I said, keeping my voice level. "And was it worth it? Making your wife feel like garbage?" He sighed, rubbing his temples wearily. "Look, Beth, this is how these things work. You wouldn't understand. It's all about appearances." "Appearances, right?" I repeated, the bitterness in my voice unmistakable. "So our marriage is just another business deal to you now?" He didn't answer, just mumbled something about being tired and headed straight to bed, leaving me alone in the darkness with my shattered illusions. The fallout from that dreadful party night seemed to permeate every corner of our home, a thick, suffocating fog that choked out any lingering warmth between us. Quarrels with Chad became the new normal, a constant undercurrent of negativity that poisoned our every interaction. He started picking apart everything about me, my weight, the few fine lines that had begun to appear around my eyes, even the clothes I wore. "Going to wear that old thing again?" he'd sneer or guess. "We're not the young couple we used to be, huh?" Tried to brush off these cruel jabs to pretend they didn't sting, but it was clear something fundamental had shifted. A deep chasm opening up between us. Chad started actively avoiding me, not just when we were out in public, but even within the confines of our own home. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, this deliberate emotional distance. Things deteriorated so rapidly that he even moved out of our shared bedroom, claiming he needed space to think. Then one particularly bleak evening, he came home in one of his foul moods and tossed a gym membership card onto my lap. "Here," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "Thought you might want to actually use one of these for a change." I looked up at him, the raw hurt of his words like a physical blow. "Chad, you know how swamped I am with the business. After a long day, I just want to relax, not spend hours at the gym." His face twisted into a cruel scowl. "Relax? Is that what you call sitting around? Maybe if you took care of yourself, I wouldn't have to avoid bringing you along to meet clients." His words hit me like a physical slap, calling me lazy and fat. Really? That was low even for him. "That's a new low even for you, Chad." I shot back, my voice trembling with a volatile mix of anger and humiliation. Chad simply shrugged, his contempt palpable. "If the shoe fits," he muttered before turning and heading to his separate room. That night, as I lay alone in our vast, empty bed, his cruel words echoed in my head, each syllable a fresh wave of pain. I had never felt so utterly worthless, so profoundly unattractive. It wasn't just the business that had come between us now. It was this gaping void where respect and affection used to reside. His absences became more frequent, nights where he didn't bother coming home at all becoming commonplace. Each time I dared to question him, he'd snap at me, his eyes hard and cold. "It's none of your business where I am." His coldness was like a relentless winter, slowly freezing me from the inside out. The man I had married, the one who used to share laughter and whispered dreams with me under the soft glow of the moonlight, was morphing into a callous stranger. Someone who seemed to actively disdain every fiber of my being. It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday evening. I had painstakingly prepared a nice dinner, clinging to the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, we could have one peaceful meal together. But the thick, suffocating tension between us was like a tangible presence in the room, impossible to ignore. I finally decided it was time to confront the festering wound that was tearing our marriage apart. "Chad," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the frantic hammering of my heart. "We need to talk. This isn't working anymore." My hands trembled slightly as I deliberately set down my fork, the clink echoing in the strained silence. He looked up from his plate, his expression instantly darkening, a storm gathering in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" I think I said the word, feeling like a lead weight in my mouth. "We should get a divorce. We can split the business 50-50 and go our separate ways." I tried to keep my voice calm, reasonable, but the tremor in my hands betrayed my inner turmoil. Chad slammed his hand down on the table. the sudden violence making the plates jump and clatter. Divorce split the business. You must be out of your goddamn mind. His fury was like a physical force, a palpable wave of rage washing over me. It was a level of anger I had never witnessed from him before. He leaned across the table, his face contorted with pure, unadulterated fury. I built this business. Everything we have is because of my hard work. You're not taking half of it. I recoiled from his brutal outburst, a chilling mixture of fear and disbelief gripping me. Chad, please, don't. Please me, he spat, his voice dripping with venom. You scary, lazy, fat woman. Don't bother me anymore and get out of my house, he roared, the sound echoing off the walls like a physical blow. Tears welled up in my eyes, hot and stinging, and this time I couldn't hold them back. I fled to the bathroom, desperate to splash cold water on my face, to somehow regain a semblance of composure. That's when I noticed Chad's phone lying carelessly on the counter. It buzzed with a new message, and without thinking, driven by a sudden irrational impulse, I picked it up. The message on the screen was from someone named Jesse, and it was sickeningly sweet, peppered with heart emojis. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you again, it read. My own heart hammered against my ribs, a painful, frantic rhythm, with trembling fingers. I typed in his password, his birthday easy to remember, a detail that now felt like a cruel joke, and opened his messages. The texts I found there were like daggers twisting in my gut. Saccharine love notes, detailed plans for romantic getaway, intimate selfies of them together, and even a message brazenly thanking him for the brand new car he'd apparently bought her. A wave of nausea washed over me, a potent cocktail of betrayal and disbelief. But as I scrolled through more and more messages, a cold, hard resolve began to solidify within me. No longer was I just the heartbroken wife. I was a woman scorned, fueled by a glacial, calculating anger. I meticulously made copies of everything. The incriminating photos, the sickeningly sweet texts, even the digital receipt for the car. Anything and everything that could serve as ammunition in the coming storm. Then with a chilling calmness, I carefully replaced his phone exactly where he'd left it. When I walked out of that bathroom, I was no longer the same woman. I didn't confront Chad, didn't break down in a fresh wave of tears. I simply went back to the table, silently cleared the remnants of our ruined dinner, and began to meticulously plan my next move. He suspected nothing, still consumed by his own self-righteous rage and staggering arrogance. The very next day, I arrived at our office before dawn, the city still cloaked in a pre-dawn hush. Mine was a steel trap, focused and determined. I needed to gather every last shred of evidence before I made my next play. I started with the financial documents, the intricate web of our company accounts, meticulously checking each entry, piecing together the puzzle of Chad's deceit. It didn't take long before I unearthed what I was looking for. A clear, undeniable record of the expensive car he had purchased for his mistress. The amount and the date staring back at me in stark black and white within our business expenditures. It was more than just a marital betrayal. It was blatant embezzlement, a slap in the face to everything we had supposedly built together. Armed with meticulously copied files of every incriminating document, I left the office, a strange mix of dread and fierce determination churning within me. Later that morning, sitting in the sterile professional calm of my lawyer's office, I laid out the devastating truth. He's been unfaithful. I stated, my voice surprisingly steady. And I have proof. Texts, pictures, even a receipt for a car he bought for his mistress. I slid the thick stack of copies across the polished mahogany desk. The lawyer, a sharp, impeccably dressed woman named Miss Albright, looked over the documents, her expression unreadable. "This is quite comprehensive," she finally said, her tone carefully neutral. "With the prenuptial agreement and this evidence, we have a very strong case. He won't know what hit him." I nodded, the full weight of the situation settling upon me. "I want to keep the business," I said, my voice firm. "It's not just his. I've poured my heart and soul into it. I've worked too damn hard to let it all go. We'll make sure of it," Ms. Albright assured me, a flicker of steely confidence in her eyes that I found incredibly reassuring. Armed with her expert legal advice, I returned home to face the music. Chad was in the living room, sprawled on the couch, mindlessly scrolling through his phone, utterly oblivious to the Category 5 hurricane that was barreling his way. "We need to talk," I said, standing in the doorway, my resolve as solid as steel. He looked up, a flash of annoyance flickering across his face. "What now, Beth?" "I've seen the text, Chad." "I know about Jesse," I stated flatly. Watching his face drain of color, the casual annoyance replaced by a stark terror. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, his phone suddenly feeling like a hot potato in his hand as he quickly tossed it onto the cushion beside him. "Cal, don't even bother denying it. I've got all the proof I need, and I've seen a lawyer." I continued, my voice as cold and sharp as shattered glass. Chad finally got up, his initial shock quickly morphing into a furious bluster. "You went through my phone. You're invading my privacy." "This is beyond privacy, Chad. You cheated, you lied, and you threatened me." "It's over," I said, cutting off his pathetic attempts at intimidation. He scoffed, shaking his head in disbelief. "You think you can just take the business from me? You're nothing without me, Beth." "That's where you're dead wrong, Chad," I retorted, my confidence growing with every word. "I'm everything I need to be, and I have more than enough to prove your infidelity, which, thanks to our lovely prenuptial agreement, means I get the business." A stunned silence hung in the air, the only sound the frantic pounding of my own heart. Chad's face was a mask of disbelief and seething rage. "You won't get away with this." "I already have, Chad," I said, a strange mix of triumph and lingering sadness swirling within me. "I'm 2 steps ahead, and I'm taking exactly what I deserve." By the time our court date finally arrived, I was prepared. Chad, in his arrogance, tried to fight it, his lawyer sputtering about my supposed lack of contribution to the business. But the evidence meticulously gathered and presented by Miss Albright was overwhelming. When the judge finally delivered the ruling, it felt almost surreal, like watching a scene unfold in a movie. By court order and strictly according to the terms of our prenuptial agreement, Chad's 50% share of the business was awarded to me. This landmark decision not only solidified my complete control over the company we had built together, but also effectively handed me the reins to our entire family fortune. But I wasn't finished, given the depth of his deceit and the profound emotional trauma he had inflicted. I demanded financial compensation for his egregious behavior. The judge, after reviewing the irrefutable evidence of Chad's infidelity and blatant financial misconduct, granted this as well. As I stood outside the courthouse, the cool breeze against my face felt like a breath of fresh air, a symbolic cleansing washing away the bitter remnants of a battle hard fought and decisively won. Back at the office, the atmosphere was palpably different. I walked through the familiar doors not just as a co-owner, but as the CEO, the undisputed leader. The employees looked up, some with hesitant smiles, others with a cautious curiosity about the changes that might be on the horizon. But all I felt was a surge of fierce determination to steer this ship right to finally chart our own course. Morning, everyone. I greeted them with a newfound confidence that resonated in my voice. "Let's get to work. We've got a lot to do, and I'm here to make sure we succeed more than ever." The responses were mixed, a blend of relief and apprehension, but mostly positive. People, I realized, were ready for a fresh start, just as I was. I spent the rest of the day immersed in plans, meeting with department heads, and laying out my vision for the future of the company. It was exhilarating, liberating to finally have complete control to make decisions based on what I believed was truly best for our collective future. Late in the afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the floor of my newly claimed office, the phone rang. It was Chad. A primal part of me tensed up at the sound of his voice. A visceral reaction to the man who had so carelessly tried to destroy me. But I reminded myself of the new reality, the power shift that had irrevocably occurred. "Olivia, I've been thinking." He began, his voice hesitant, almost pleading. "I made a mistake, a huge one. I was wondering if maybe you could consider taking me back in any capacity at the company." The sheer audacity of his request took my breath away, but I managed to maintain a cool professional composure. "Chad," I said, my voice icily calm, "you've got some nerve calling here after everything. You really think I'd let you back into my life, into my company?" I know it's a lot to ask," he stammered, desperation creeping into his tone. "But I'm out of options, Olivia." "That sounds like a you problem, Chad," I stated flatly. This company, my company, is moving forward, not backward. You made your bed, now you lie in it, Olivia. Please. He tried again, his voice cracking with a raw vulnerability that I found myself surprisingly unmoved by. I think you've said enough, Chad. Goodbye, I cut him off, hanging up the phone before he could utter another word. It felt good, cathartic, to finally close that chapter, to assert my independence without a single shred of doubt. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I spearheaded a complete rebranding of the company, shifting our focus towards innovation and community impact. We launched several initiatives that were deeply important to me, like sponsoring local health programs and investing in eco-friendly technologies. The community took notice, the industry took notice, and most importantly, our sales figures soared. Morale within the company was higher than it had been in years. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine, unadulterated sense of pride in what I was building. Valuable lesson: never underestimate your own strength and resilience. When faced with betrayal and adversity, remember that you have the power to not only survive, but to rise above and build an even brighter future for yourself. Protect yourself legally and financially, and never let anyone dim your light or diminish your worth. What are your thoughts on Olivia's journey? Have you ever faced a similar situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more empowering stories.